Shabbat Shalom. I want to share with you an anecdote that happened my first year of rabbinical school about 30 years ago. Yeah, or a little bit more. So we find ourselves, all of these new students, in the class of Professor Israel Francos, who was a Holocaust survivor, who was probably about this tall. And he was a man that I've known in my life to know the most amount of Talmud ever. And he's going around the class asking us questions, and for some reason, we're talking about autopsies, right? What happens when somebody dies, and how do we prevent an autopsy from taking place, because it's forbidden by Jewish law in most cases. And all of my classmates are shaking their heads, right? And they're saying, one of them raises his hand and said, Dr. Francos, that goes against American law. We can't do that. So then he turns to me. I think this is the first time he ever spoke to me in my life. He goes, Pinchas, my Hebrew name, what do they do in Mexico when you have to stop an autopsy from happening? I said, we bribe them. He says, exactly. He says, see, Pinchas knows because he's from Mexico. So I really didn't understand at the moment what it meant, but it really meant something profound. Only when you come from certain places, only when you were born in a certain context, do you understand everything that Jews have tried to do throughout time to remain Jewish. And sometimes that really means going against the grain of what the country requires from you as a loyal citizen. Now, I must admit, in my case, in Mexico, bribery is a way of life, right? It's nothing extraordinary. If you do not know how to give bribes, you won't survive. Now, you probably think I'm exaggerating. So here comes anecdote number 2. Already back in Mexico as a rabbi, our synagogue was about 5 miles from our house, and it took me an hour to get there every day because the traffic was so dense. And you couldn't walk it because you will get mugged. So also at the same time in Mexico City, the authorities, to prevent pollution, if your car had a certain number at the end of the license plate, that day you wouldn't take the car onto the street. For example, you had a 1 or a 2, it was on Monday. A 3 and a 4, it was on Tuesday, and so forth and so on. So wake up one day and without thinking about it, get in my car, go to shul, and I get stopped by the police. I'm driving on the wrong day. My car should have stayed home. So I said, oh my gosh. So they come up to me, and they say, well, sir, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. You're going to have to come with us. We're going to have to impound your car. It's a hefty fine. I said, look, officer, I really don't have a lot of time for this. What's it going to take to settle this as men? Literally, that's the language, right? That's a code word. Says to me, well, today, maybe 100 pesos. So I take 100 pesos, give them to him, and then I'm thinking, I still have halfway to go. They're going to stop me again. So I said, look, officer, I have a problem. How am I going to get to where I'm going? They're going to stop me again. I don't have unlimited amounts of 100 pesos bills. He says, don't worry. We'll escort you back to your house so nobody will mess with you. It's included in the fee. Third anecdote about bribes. I find myself with my family a couple of years ago. I don't know, kids were still in high school. And we are driving literally through Croatia. And if you want to get from Split to Dubrovnik, you actually have to go through Bosnia for 5 minutes. Everybody in the car is asleep, and the only one awake with me is Daniela. Now, Daniela was reading a book that was like this thick about the war in the Balkans and the ethnic composition of the Balkans. And while everybody was asleep, says, Dad, why don't you just make a left turn and we go to Mostar in Bosnia? I would love to see that city. It's a Muslim city. I said, okay. So I turned the car, and we literally drive into Bosnia. When they wake up, we're in the middle of a city with gigantic mosque, where you could still see the bullet holes from the war in all of the buildings. It was kind of crazy. So we take a tour, we go around. It's a beautiful city, get back in the car, drive back to Croatia, and Google Maps takes us to the wrong highway. Instead of bringing us the way we got in, it brings us around through a one-lane highway. Not one back and one forth. No, one lane. So if somebody was coming the opposite way, you had to stop and move. It was really like a 2-hour drive that should have taken 20 minutes to the border. And when we finally get to the border, and by the way, we're passing zones with a Serbian flag, right? We're in Bosnia, and there's Serbian flags, and there's minefields. It's really complicated. Finally, we get to the border, and ahead of us, there's a car with Italian plates. You can tell because it has IT on the European plate, and it just turns around. I said, oh my God, why didn't they let them go through? So we get to the border, and again, now everybody's asleep in the car again. So I go to the border guard, and he says to me, what's your business here? I said, well, I want to go to Dubrovnik. He says, well, you can't. This border crossing is just for locals. And you're going to have to go back to where you came from and cross in the official international European border. I said, look, I don't want to go back. There's going to be night soon. And then everybody starts waking up, right, in the car. And I say to him, look, how many of you are there here in the post? He says, well, there's about 5 of us. I said, can I buy you guys dinner? He says, okay. I said, if I buy you dinner, will you let me through? He says, for sure. And then I'm thinking, it's going to be $500. But whatever it takes, I don't want to go back. So I said, and how much is dinner? He says, oh, 100 euros for everybody. I'm like, it's the best day of my life, right? Then Joshua wakes up and goes, oh my God, everybody wake up. That is bribing a customs officer. Everybody wake up. And now Daniela is filming me with her cell phone. So, and this is a true story. I take my passport and I say to the guy, I say, would you mind stamping my passport that I was once in Bosnia? He looks at me and says, you're not supposed to be here. I cannot stamp your passport. Just cross. There is a line in this week's Torah portion which is fantastic. Lo tikach shochad. You should not take bribes. Ki ha-shochad yaver einei chachamim veisalef divrei tzadikim. Because bribes blind the eyes of the wise and they impair the words of the righteous. Now, after all these stories that I told you, how can I possibly take this seriously? Well, I have to tell you, every day since Monday, we've been blasting the shofar after our morning prayers. And one of the things that the shofar is supposed to do is to bring you back to repent and to take stock of the things that you've done wrong in the past year. For those of you that feel nothing when you hear the shofar, let me tell you what it should feel like. That feeling when you're stopped by the cops and you see the lights behind you in the rearview mirror, that's what the shofar blast should feel like. Your stomach should sink. You should feel, oh my gosh, I've been caught. And the reason I'm telling you the stories and I'm talking about bribing is because bribes are not only something that extends to our daily lives. It's not only that you learn when you're born in Mexico as a way of life. I'm not making it up, really seriously, that's what it is. Bribes are something that we do to ourselves and our souls every single day. We bribe ourselves constantly. And part of the idea of the month of Elul is that we stop this bribery. Let me give you a couple of examples. What do we do with addictions? Whatever your addiction is, God forbid you have one, I know that I can stop whenever I want. This will be my last drink. I'll stop tomorrow, it doesn't matter, just a party. That is bribery. Every time we're sitting in a casino, not that anyone here ever goes to the casino, and says, oh, you know, it's fallen on black 5 times in a row. The next one's going to be red. Just one more time. And black falls again. That's bribery. when we have bias against diminishing costs. For example, when we're in college and we say, I've already spent 3 years in this major that I'm never going to use. I'm never going to be an engineer. But you know what? I've spent so much money and I stayed here for so long that I might as well just finish it. And we keep making ourselves believe that if we just keep with it for another day, it'll be okay. And something I know a lot about, dieting. This will be my last slice of pizza. Come on. This cannot be 500 calories. The label is wrong. Tomorrow I'll eat cauliflower pizza. And that happens all the time. And confirmation bias, do you know what it means? It's a new term that I just learned, confirmation bias. That's when you always watch CNN if you are on the left, and you always watch Fox if you're on the right. You only watch things, and you only read things, and you only listen to things that agree with the way you see the world. And you never give other people the chance to tell you what they think or what they believe, because you won't listen. By the way, if you've ever watched Israeli TV, Channel 12, Channel 13, they have these panels. They bring people from all different parts of the spectrum of Israeli society and political life. And by the way, CNN has tried to do that, but it doesn't work because the hosts are completely biased still. But in Israeli TV, they all scream at each other. I'm just waiting for the moment they're going to get up and punch each other out. And they really take it out and they really debate different points of view. That's what we do as Jews. So we've never bribed our intellect before, until now. We won't listen to anybody else. You know, it's incredible. But many of us also engage in moral licensing that comes from bribing ourselves and saying, I already gave tzedakah, so I can go ahead and do whatever I want. And by the way, the word tzedakah appears in our Torah portion, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice thou shalt pursue. The word justice and the word tzedakah are the same word. We bring justice to the world by making it fairer, by making it more equal. But remember, being able to give things away to those who are less fortunate is not a way of making us feel better and bribing ourselves into thinking that this really will make it happen. Remember what Abraham Lincoln said, and this is one of my favorite quotes by Lincoln. You can't strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. And you cannot get rid of poverty by impoverishing the rich. And most important, he said, you can't establish a society of law by using bribery as a resource. And it's all connected. It's all connected. In a society where we bribe each other, where we bribe ourselves, there can never be justice. And the month of Elul is the time of the year when we as Jews are commanded by God to remember that. Now, I know that my words to some of you are like, of course, what bribery? Do you know, by the way, that America was ranked 30 in the scale of countries with corruption? 30. That means there's only 30 other countries ahead of us, like Afghanistan and Mexico. So we should be careful. When I was growing up, I remember my father telling me, one day you need to leave Mexico, because it's never been a day that I wake up and things have been better than the day before when I went to sleep. And that, by the way, is corruption. And to all of us who live here, it's a funny anecdote. But when it gets to you, it's a big problem. You have no idea what it's like to live in a society where there's no law and order. I do. And by the way, this is what the Torah portion warns about. The pursuit of justice starts with our own lives, with our own souls. It begins inside of us and extends to all aspects of society. There's 23 days until Rosh Hashanah. sorry to be the bearer of bad news, 23 days, which means there's 1 month, roughly, to Yom Kippur. The clock is ticking. What are we going to do with this time? It may be the last time that we have to really repent and turn back to God. We need to take it seriously. You know, the Midrash says, Dayan shenotal shochad, afilu la'asok din emet. A judge that accepts a bribe, even to interpret something rightfully, eino yodea ma hu oseh. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's actually destroying the world. Every time we tell ourselves, tomorrow I will stop, just one more time. This is the last time. I promise you it won't happen again. We better mean it. This is the time to remember that our time is running out. Shabbat Shalom.